All right, so now let's add a new component. Let's go back to putting this in the URL. And so instead of our literal, we're going to put in app.component. Oops. Why you need to fix that for me. Put it in quotations, that's why. Okay. Do app.component. And we'll go back to the HTML file and then close that quote. And so that should be good. App template, maybe it's URL. There we go, lowercase. All right, so now I'm going back to this app component.html instead of just the template. And so I'm going to utilize this as my template. And let's just see if I put in the data binding that we did a little earlier where we had title. And just to make sure that works, I'm going to do npm start. And eventually I'm going to pull over that file. Compiling. Building. Lots of pretty lines flashing. And eventually up comes a page. And it's doing what I expected it to do. And that was that I have that title page and then my first app, and so everything's being loaded from the component. So now we're going to create a new component that we're going to put in here as well. We're just going to put a little input box and maybe a button or something like that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come back here into my command line. I'm going to terminate my server for the moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Angular create the component for me. So I'm going to type in ng space generate component, and then whatever I'm going to name my component, like maybe search results or something like that. All right, and I'll let it run. And it did some things, returned me back to my command line. So if I look up at my file structure now, in my app folder, I now have a new folder called search results. So if I look in search results, then I should have very similar files to what we've been exploring in our app or our root components. So it created something for me called results, search results component.css, which is blank because I don't have any custom stylings yet for this component. I have search results component, which just gave me this default text, so we'll just utilize that. And then this is that test file. So you said I don't need to use the test file, so I'm going to delete that one. Okay. And then I'm going to look in my components. And so there's all this stuff is written for me, so I don't have to, which makes it really nice. And then it created this selector. So there's my directive. It's saying I'm going to utilize this component.html file. That sounds good. And I'm going to utilize this component.css file. So that looks good. So now that we know what our selector is, why don't we go into our component, our app component, so the one we've been working on prior. Sorry, I want to go into the HTML, so the app component HTML that we created to show this. And now we're going to implement the new component that we created on this particular file. So this is where the reusability comes into play. All I have to type in is that, I don't even remember what it was now, so I'm going to come back into the component and look at what our selector was. It said app.searchResults. So now I'll go back into my component and I will put that directive in here. Oops. And open and close. So now when I save this, of course my server's not running, so excuse me. I'm going to save it and we're going to start up our server again, npm start. Once that starts, it's going to reload a page in my browser, but this is still pointing to my localhost 4200, so this should work as well. And then after it's finished compiling, there it is. So we can see that we've got several components working. Well, we've got two components, right? So we have our app component running right here. We can see that we're utilizing data binding right here with our title. And then we're utilizing another component that we've plopped in here, or could plop in anywhere else that we needed, with whatever is in that HTML template. So we have successfully been working with creating a Angular app and then creating some components and making those render in our local server. So in our next video, we will work on uploading those to GitHub.